This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. It is not intended to cause or induce breach of an existing agency agreement.
Hello? 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 This is the Vancouver
Commercial
Real Estate Podcast.
And welcome back to the Vancouver Commercial Real Estate Podcast. I'm Cory Wright.
And I'm Melisa Moretti.
And Melisa, I couldn't help but notice when you walked in today, your red and white Make America Great Again hat. Are you celebrating the Trump victory?
Wow. Okay. Inaccurate.
Oh,
I do not have that hat.
No.
Although I did see a good one. It said, Make America Healthy Again. I like that
Make
one.
America Healthy Again.
Right?
Now, is that also a Trump campaign hat or no?
I have no idea.
No. So that's obviously...
I don't know, but I'm all for that because I think America's a little sick.
Yeah. Well, they had their election, which is the big news.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people are probably surprised he won. I think maybe people may be surprised how he won. He won by, I think, a lot larger margin than maybe some people predicted. And he won some states I think people didn't think was going to happen. But nevertheless, we've got Mr. Trump entering the White House in 2025 for 4 more years. He's going to have pretty much his way because he's going to have the Senate, and I think he's also going to have the House. And he's going to do a second term. In America, you can't be a president more than 8 years, whether it's consecutive or different terms.
Mm-hmm.
He's got nothing to worry about to get reelected. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah. It worries me a little bit because also his age. I'm thinking, whatever he does.
Have you seen the current?
It's not going to impact him, for 20 more years to come. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever he does.
Well, I don't know if we can worry about age because right now they've got Biden, who looks like Weekend at Bernie's, walking around.
Poor thing.
So I think people are just hoping he gets through his term. He's been almost, that's a different story. And I don't think, and maybe this is kind of like, me looking at it from the outside in, but I don't think Biden won over Trump because he was that much better at the time. I think it was just people wanted someone different and he was the default option.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not kind of I think he was doing that much better at the time with it because he was obviously in a vice chair to Barack Obama, just like Kamala Harris was in the vice chair to Biden, which I don't really think she really did a lot in a vice chair. When I think when Biden was kind of looked like he was aging, is she could have probably jumped in and probably been more impactful, but didn't really come across that way. So maybe that didn't really work in her favor. But nevertheless, we got Mr. Trump joining us in 2025 for 4 more years.
Buckle up.
Probably do whatever he wants and not at the risk of getting reelected. So again, he can do whatever he wants again. So it'll be really interesting to see. I know from a Canadian economy standpoint, the American economy is obviously, it looks like it's in a better state than the current Canadian economy. He's very pro-America. He's talked a lot about tariffs and all that stuff. So it could be interesting to see how that would impact the Canadian economy once he's in. But the one thing is, I think Canada probably is we're the number one export for the States. So we do have some negotiating power there that if you do that to us, we might do it to you type of thing. But it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I'm really looking forward to how Donald Trump probably tells Justin Trudeau to go shove it, because I don't think Trump likes Trudeau, and Trump doesn't really care anymore because he can do whatever he wants because he doesn't get reelected. And I think he knows Justin Trudeau's on his way out, so he probably doesn't care. So it's going to be interesting to see how we get bullied there in the next couple of years. So we got just to recap. So we have NDP in Canada, which currently, as of right now, and there is at least one, maybe 2 judicial recounts, they're in a majority position. So they can they're going to have to work with the Greens. They're going to have to work with the Conservatives probably more than they want to because it's just slightly a majority and they got to give it the speaker. But nevertheless, they're still in majority position. So we got the NDP for 4 more years here in BC, which will be very interesting. We got Donald Trump down south for 4 more years who just doesn't care and is probably going to start World War III. We got Mr. Trudeau, who single-handedly has seen how to been able to crash the Canadian economy, it feels. I think it's all but done in that respect, where I think it is going to be a conservative government here in Canada, which that should be getting people a little bit excited because Trudeau, under him, the economy's kind of gone the opposite way. I was watching social media today, and Kevin O'Leary, the Shark Tank Dragon Den guy, who just loves Trudeau, goes on these Trudeau rants about how he should be praised because he's managed to stay in power for 9 years, but never been able to execute on anything. And how could someone do that? And how he couldn't even run a candy shop. So if you're ever looking for a good rant on Trudeau, that's where a good place to go. I know I'm totally going to get audited after this. I'm totally going to get audited by the government. So you got Trudeau, who's probably on his way out. You got Trump on his way in. You got the NDP. It's in again for a third time. That's the first time that's ever happened. So it's going to be interesting because the NDP seems to spend money like they don't care. And every time they're getting power, we always have a bigger deficit when they leave. So time will tell. Enough about politics and ranting about politics. Let's get to our interview today with Rod MacKay from our William Wright Vancouver office, unlocking what we feel could be the 5 best markets in BC for 2025.
All right, let's go.
Enjoy, guys. This podcast is presented by Impact Commercial.
Impact Commercial, John, Alan, the team over there are fantastic. They've all been on the show.
They have, yeah.
Friends of the show.
Great guys.
Wealth of experience. They can help with all your commercial financing needs.
Whether it's owner-occupiers, land development funds, commercial investments, or multifamily, these guys got you covered.
And they recently obtained their CMHC correspondent lender status.
So for all your commercial lending needs, visit them at impactcommercial.ca.
That's impactcommercial.ca.
We're here today with Rod MacKay, senior broker from our William Wright Commercial Vancouver office. Rod, how you doing?
Doing very well, thanks, Cory.
Well, Rod, this is our third year doing this now, where we have picked our top 5 markets to watch out for in 2025 at William Wright Commercial. Last week, we had the Western Investors top 5 markets to watch in, I guess, arguably middle to Western Canada, from Manitoba over to BC. But every year you join us, we go through our top 5 picks for 2025 for investors at William Wright Commercial. And I will caveat to say a few things before we get started here is there is some criteria that we consider, which we'll talk about there. Some of our markets kind of are very repetitive because the metrics still make a lot of sense with it. So Rod, before we get into that, if you can tell our listeners who maybe haven't heard your previous episodes with us more about yourself and how you got into commercial real estate.
Yeah, certainly. So I was born and raised in Vancouver. I've lived here my entire life. Prior to joining William Wright Commercial, I was in the service industry while I was going to college. My father, Rod MacKay, he's also in the real estate industry. So he suggested that I get my real estate license, which I did. And then I ended up at William Wright Commercial in 2018. And fast forward almost 7 years, still been here, and it's been an amazing ride.
Well, we're very thrilled to have you. And I think after we kind of got past the point that we thought your dad implanted you in the company there to get the inside secrets, once we kind of got past that point, we realized that wasn't the case. We're very pleased to have you here. And again, like I said, our third episode here. Every year we got our top 5 markets. Now, I do want to start with something for those who may have listened to last year's. One of our top markets, I believe it was our top market we picked, was Penticton at the time.
That's right.
And we still think Penticton's a great market. It's not on the list this year, mainly because one thing that has changed in the province is the short-term rentals. And a big thing when we look for like the investment market, whether it's multifamily or commercial, that does have an impact because it does impact obviously commercial type tenants because these are people that are coming and staying in the communities, they're vacationing in the communities, they're spending money in the communities, which also drives demand for retail, drives demand for all of that stuff. So they aren't on our list here, but we wanted to just bring that up in case someone thought, hey, last year they were one of the best markets. Why aren't they there? What happened? It's just because there's a lot of short-term rentals that obviously impacted that marketplace. We still think it's a great market, but it just doesn't meet the same criteria for the 5 that we have this year. So we'll get that out of the way. That way we can avoid getting emails and angry emails from listeners about what happened to Penticton. So still a great market. Not saying it's not. It just didn't move the needle for the 5 that we have this year. So Rod, without further ado, we're going to go from 5 to 1. What market do we have this year for number 5?
So you know what? We actually, last year, if you remember, we actually had 5 in an honorable mention. So maybe I'll just start by going through the markets that we had, and then we can get into
absolutely.
It this year.
Let's do that.
This year, we've got some of the usual suspects, but a couple new ones on the list and a couple that were omitted, as you mentioned. So last year, number 1 market, we had Penticton. Number 2, Nanaimo. Number 3, we had Kelowna. Number 4, Victoria. Number 5 was Delta. And then number 6 from Alberta, we had Edmonton as an honorable mention.
Yes.
So this year, I guess we actually have 6 on the list this year as well, because we do have an honorable mention. So we'll start with number 6. We're going to the Central Island, to the city of Parksville.
City of Parksville. So we'll add a little bit of, if I can add just 2 seconds of context here before you dive into it. One thing as an investment strategy, you never want to jump right into the fire. So although we think Nanaimo is a phenomenal market, and it's still going to be, I'm guessing it's on the list this year, Rod, I'll let you tell us that. But going to a market that's very close to that market can almost get like a halo effect. And if you've been to Parksville, one of the things that Parksville struggles with is because it does have an older population, that a lot of the properties are getting willed down versus sold. So it's harder and harder to find property in that community, especially waterfront property. But you also had a forward-thinking council. At one point in time, I'm going to go on a limb and say this, and if we fact check it, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. At one point in time, Parksville actually had the most development permits per capita, I think, on the Central Island and maybe the province. So you're looking at a community of probably 16 to 17,000. It probably swells to double that in the summertime, but you have a large percentage of development, both commercial and residential, going on in that community. And with the housing prices in Victoria getting as expensive as they are, that's pushing people up island. The Nanaimo's obviously growing in costs. Parksville is kind of like your next logical halo effect type of thing from a community standpoint, with proximity versus like a Campbell River, which is quite a bit further up island. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there about Parksville. Now I'm going to let you take the runway and go with it.
Yeah, no, I think you covered a lot of it, Cory. But people that have lived in BC, grown up here, I think when they think of Parksville, they really think of it, for its beaches and resorts. It's got that massive spanning beach where the tide goes way out. So people really kind of think of it as a summer community, even a retirement community. Like you were saying, it's got an older population. But, one of the reasons we picked it for this list is its population growth. So if you look at the past 5 years where they've been tracking the statistics, it's had a 9% growth over the past 5 years, making it a very fast growing city. So it really drives demand for housing and commercial services, which is obviously one of the reasons we look at cities to put on this list. And then, as you mentioned, the community development. So it's got a proactive municipal leadership, seems to be fostering a really development-friendly environment, encouraging new projects and business investments. So that's some of the reasons why we picked Parksville as an honorable mention, number 6 for our list here.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Rod, let's get into our list here. Number 5. What do we have for number 5 this year?
Number 5. So I guess we actually didn't move it at all from last year. We're keeping Delta in at number 5.
Keeping Delta. So I'm going to dive into just a little bit of the kind of the criteria. Now, again, Parksville's kind of an outlier when it comes to our criteria. Most of the criteria are for communities of 100,000 people or greater, or a trade area of 250,000 or greater. Obviously, Parksville's a little bit smaller than that from a population, but it does kind of fall in the greater Nanaimo trade area. So that's kind of why we included it. But Delta has so many good metrics still that work in its favor that we think it's undervalued. So Rod, why would Delta be a good spot to put some of your money, whether you're an owner, occupier, investor, for 2025?
Yeah, so this is a market I personally really like. Working out of William Wright's Vancouver office, I do the bulk of my work in the Lower Mainland, and there's lots of reasons to point to Delta. I mean, the infrastructure upgrades that are going to be going on are massive. You're talking close to $10 billion over a couple of projects. Notably, the port expansion. You've got the $3.5 billion expansion of Delta's port. So it's going to enhance its role as a logistics powerhouse, attracting warehousing and distribution businesses. So really big for the industrial sector there. And then you've also got the George Massey tunnel replacement. So $4 billion project it's estimated to be to replace the tunnel, 8 lanes. If you know the Lower Mainland at all, heading north or south on that highway there, it can get really bottlenecked, specifically during rush hours. So that's when you're looking at logistics and distribution, it can make it a big challenge. But looking long term, having this massive project, it will make it a great place to invest, I think. Now, if you look at the industrial market there, it's really taken off. Most of the industrial product there is in the Tilbury area.
Yep.
So you've got, lots of freestanding and strata projects there. But it's really been gaining momentum, and it reflects Delta's business-friendly environment and strategic location. And then also from a residential perspective, you look at Ladner and Tsawwassen, the two biggest neighborhoods there. Benchmark housing prices seem to increase year over year, indicating a growing population and demand for commercial services as well.
Well, I think that's one thing to look at. And one of our things that we look at in markets is where are the current lease rates versus the purchase prices? Is there opportunity for investors to buy and then maybe get higher renewal rates to then strengthen their investment? Delta is one of those markets where the biggest challenge, as you said, can be the bridges, can be the George Massey Tunnel. Once that George Massey Tunnel has been expanded and you got the Delta Port there, which is very close to YVR, which are now, once that bridge is sorted out there, now you're 40 minutes to Vancouver. The central logistical part of Delta makes a lot of sense. And we had Cam Archer on the program just recently talking about Richmond, similar type metrics to it, where you've got almost an epicenter from the ports to the airport, even to downtown, that it creates a very, very strong logistical spot, especially for the industrial type end users or investors that want to look in there. And when that happens, demand goes up, prices go up. That's why we think Delta's a good spot. Rod, number four on our list this year.
This one's always been on our list, and looks like it will be for the foreseeable future with all the exciting stuff that's happening there. We're going over the island to Victoria.
Victoria is number 4. Now, some people might think, hey, why has it gone down? Maybe it's gone up a little bit. Victoria is a great market, but again, metrics that we look at in this survey is where are current lease rates and where are those lease rates going? Because as an investor, if I buy a building and the lease rates are at $18 a foot now, but potentially I feel those rates could be $25 or maybe even $30 over the next 5 to 7 year period because demand's coming in, development's coming in, population's coming in. My NOI, which is dictated by my rents, and my cap rate, which is dictated by my purchase price, which hasn't changed, is only going to increase in years to come. That creates an equity opportunity to take some money out. So that's why we still love Victoria. Rod, tell us all about Victoria.
Yeah, well, we still love Victoria, and it's gone down in the list, as you mentioned. I think, one of the reasons here is we're seeing the numbers coming out of the Victoria office, and I don't think they need any more help, by putting them up to number 1 or 2 there. Those guys are doing great work out there. So some of the reasons why we're looking to invest and park our money in Victoria for 2025. I mean, there's some massive projects going in there. It just seems like a place where everybody wants to park their money. You've got the Harris Green Village project. They'll deliver over 1,500 rental units and 100,000 square feet of commercial space. You've also got the Roundhouse at Bayview Place, 1,900 unit project by Focus Equities. It's got residential and commercial space as well. So these projects will really help densify Victoria, and it's obviously going to increase demand for commercial spaces as well. We also look to the tech sector. So it's got a booming tech industry in Victoria, and it's attracting companies and talent, again, for office and innovation spaces. And then, another project they're working on, I think, Harbourfront projects. You've got Reliance Properties pursuing the rezoning of 6.7 acres of harbourfront land for a mixed-use community. So that's, I think, including light industrial, institutional, and residential space. So lots of exciting stuff going on in Victoria. And it's obviously a huge tourism hub. It's the capital of our province, and people seem to love to invest there.
And one thing I'll also put out there is why it's moved down the list is a lot of people have got to Victoria and invested in Victoria. So one of our criteria that we kind of look at is, does that opportunity still exist? And if we go back, just as an example, the multifamily sector back in its heyday, you could find multifamily investments in Victoria probably at a 5 cap or a 5.5 cap, when we were seeing those same investment opportunities in the mainland at probably like a 3.5 cap. And why we kept saying Victoria multifamily at that time was a good investment, because the vacancy rates, both in the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island and the Greater Victoria, were almost the same. So if I'm not going to be subject to a much higher vacancy, but I can get a much higher cap rate in the similar asset, that's a deal you'd take all day. Fast forward 2 or 3 years after that fact, cap rates in Victoria were around like 3.5. So everyone caught on to it. So that's one reason why we take that consideration is how many institutions, how many REITs, how many of those type of investors have got into that market to raise the prices already So investors looking to come into the market today may not have the same opportunities they would have had like 3 or 4 years ago. Although, in saying that, we still think it's a great market and should be highly considered by most investors looking in 2025. So, Rod, we got Delta at 5, Victoria at 4. Where are we going for number 3?
We're going to Chilliwack.
To Chilliwack. So for those who listened last week, we had Peter, the editor from the Western Investor, join us there. They had Chilliwack on their radar for 2025. And I shared a personal experience when I started in this industry, probably like 13 or 14 years ago now. It feels like maybe it's longer. I used to do tons of leasing in Chilliwack because like the competition really wouldn't go out there. And the education level you had to give to potential tenants and investors, it could have been its own country. Like people didn't even consider Chilliwack part of the Lower Mainland. Fast forward to now, investors, big box retailers, all of those people want to be in Chilliwack now. So it's come a long way in the past decade, going from not on anyone's radar to on everyone's radar. But Rod, I'll let you tell us more about Chilliwack.
Yeah, you've touched on a bit of it there for sure. I think the industrial investments, you look at Red Bull's acquisition of land for a new manufacturing plant, followed Molson Coors, big investment out there. There's lots to be excited about in the industrial market in Chilliwack. Population growth, this is obviously a metric that we'll look at when determining our markets. It grew by 12.1% from 2016 to 2021.
Wow.
So it's making it, one of Canada's fastest growing metropolitan areas. And obviously this leads to increasing demand for residential and commercial properties. Yeah, and we've also got some infrastructure enhancements, upgrades to major transportation routes. You've got the proximity to the U.S. border. So this helps facilitate business operations and logistics. So yeah, those are some of the reasons that we're looking to Chilliwack. Another thing I should note: this isn't necessarily commercial real estate related at all. But I do quite a bit of hiking, and typically, you'll go to the North Shore, or you'll head up to Squamish or Whistler. But did a hike in Chilliwack a few weeks ago, and they've got some pretty crazy mountains out there. I think it was called Rex Mountain, and just gorgeous out there.
Better River. Cultus Lake's not too far by. Tons of good stuff going on in Chilliwack. So I agree. Chilliwack should be on everyone's list for 2023. And it's probably been there for a while. We're just now putting it more into the forefront for people. So Rod, number 2, where are we going this year in 2025? Where is our second best market, we believe, for 2025?
Yeah, so this one, again, always on the list. And we've also got an office out there. We're heading to the Okanagan, to Kelowna.
We're going to Kelowna. So like, as you pointed out, it's been on our list, I think, pretty sure every year. It's been on most people's lists every year. But one thing that we do like about Kelowna now is there's also been tons of development and there's more coming into it, but the population growth is still growing at a rapid pace, which is giving it the ability to kind of keep up to the development it is. Because some people may question with the short-term rental markets and all the condos up there, how's that going to get impacted? We talked about Penticton earlier on the program, how they have been potentially will be impacted on it. So we think there's a lot more infrastructure and a lot more industry that supports Kelowna, not just tourism, maybe more like a market like Penticton that may be very heavily into the tourism side of things and more impacted by the short-term rental. We feel Kelowna has got enough diversity throughout of it with regards to industries that are building that community that it won't be as hit as hard as maybe some markets that don't have as much infrastructure. So Rod, I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a beautiful lake, lots of wineries, and top-tier golf courses. I don't really know what else you need. But if we look at Kelowna, the UBC Okanagan expansion has been huge. The university's growth includes plans for up to 3,500 new homes. So that'll be great for density in the area. The industrial sector has been taking off. I know lease rates are getting pretty close to what we're seeing in the Lower Mainland if they haven't already almost reached those levels. So you've got low vacancy rates, and you're seeing a lot of development in the industrial sector there, as there seems to be a really high demand for manufacturing and distribution facilities out there. And then again, I'll touch on population surge out there. Between 2016 and 2021, it's almost 14% population increase. So again, just driving demand for housing and commercial services. And then, of course, if you look at Kelowna, it's such a vacation hotspot. It's huge for tourism. It's got a great lifestyle appeal, as I mentioned. It's got the lake. It's got wineries. It's got golf courses. I mean, what's not to like out there?
Yeah, no, I can't agree with you more. I think it's got so much infrastructure now. There's so many industries that are doing so well in Kelowna that I think it's going to keep going. And then you got developers that are still buying and they're still building, right? So that's always a good sign. So Kelowna's number 2. So Rod, we'll just do a quick recap here. 6, honorable mention, we got Parksville. Number 5, we got Delta. Number 4, we got Victoria. Number 3, we got Chilliwack. And number 2, we got our friends in Kelowna. For anyone who listens to this program or talks to me on a daily basis, you can probably guess what our number 1 market is going to be, but mainly because the metrics in there just work. And they're going to continue to work for a long time. And the opportunity to buy into this market in these metrics still has some runway. You haven't missed the boat. Literally, you haven't missed the boat. That this is our number 1 market for 2025. Rod, where are we going?
Heading to the Central Islands in Nanaimo. And yeah, like you said, not a surprise to anybody. I think in the 3 years we've been doing this, it's always been top 3 in the list. And yeah, there's plenty of reasons why.
And one of the biggest reasons, I'll just chime in real quick, is you can still find a lot of legacy lease rates there. And by that, I mean, you can find a lot of buildings that may have like $10, $12, $14, $20 lease rates, that buildings around them at market today are renting out for like $25, $30, $35 a foot. That always creates a great opportunity for investors to get in, to get that value and that drive up in the value of the building relatively quickly. But because you've got so much population growth and you've got so many companies trying to get into that market now, it keeps your vacancy rates relatively in check. And I remember I was talking to a banker and they asked me, what is the vacancy rate for retail in Nanaimo? And I answered, I have no clue. And I don't think anyone else does because the market's probably too small to accurately follow. But what I can tell you, when I drive around Nanaimo, I definitely don't see any for lease signs. And the banker looked at me and he goes, oh, good point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, tons of development applications. I was actually there earlier this year with the client. We took the ferry over, and just looking at the amount of cranes that they've got in the downtown core there, it gives you a pretty good indication of what's going on there. But tons of development applications all across the city and the surrounding areas. Some notable ones. I mean, this one's crazy. The Sandstone development, that's 294 hectare master plan community that'll have 2,200 residential units and over 3 million square feet of industrial space. I think I saw. I'm not like I wasn't sure if this was accurate or not. It just seems pretty wild. But you've obviously also got the port expansion out there.
Yeah.
So they're going to be doing enhancements to Nanaimo's container port, and it's really bolstering its role as a logistics hub and attracting businesses that are reliant on efficient transportation. So that's a big one. I think we've talked about that in the past. And infrastructure improvements, and including transportation. You talk about Hello Ferries. It seems like it's been a success. It's carrying people between downtown or Vancouver, just out of Cole Harbour, I think, right into the city of Nanaimo in 45 minutes or so. So that's
crazy. It's good.
I actually know a couple of people that I grew up with that are commuting at least a couple days a week between Nanaimo and Vancouver, just because the cost of living is better out there, and they'll still come into the office a couple days a week. But they found that Hello very, very convenient. And then economic stability. I mean, if you look at the major employers in the area, you've got healthcare, education, public services. So this really provides a stable economic base. And that's those are some of the reasons why we pick Nanaimo each and every year to be on this list.
And one thing I'll add, and I talked about this a little bit last week when we had Peter on, because Western Investor also highlighted Nanaimo, and I might get this wrong. I think it was last year they had a record-setting year for value of building permits, and that record broke the previous year's record for it into the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in development permit issues. So permits that are issued. So there's developers are building. Absorption of the product is obviously there, otherwise they wouldn't keep building. You touched a little bit about like the housing prices. It's still relatively affordable. I think you are seeing a migration up island, maybe from the greater Victoria, where housing prices have obviously continued to rise in that beautiful city, forcing people kind of up island. And your next hub city, once you get outside of Victoria, becomes Nanaimo. And you've got some surrounding cities like Duncan and Parksville we talked about, but Nanaimo is kind of like your center hub where everything kind of transacts in that central island there. So it's I can't stress enough how much of an opportunity that probably still exists in that market. And I know by saying this, we're probably creating competition for ourselves, for other people who want to invest in the marketplace there. But it's such a great market that if you can find the right assets at the right price, you got to buy at the right price. And the one thing I will say, a lot of these secondary markets, We use the word crap just from a descriptive kind of things, but there's a lot of crap that goes for sale in some of these smaller markets at prices that don't make any sense, and it just never sells. So you got to be very conscious about what you're buying versus something comes for sale. It looks like a cheap price versus Vancouver pricing, so you buy it only to find out later that it's not what you thought it was, and there's not really much liquidity in it. Because when you're buying into these secondary and tertiary markets, there's not the same liquidity there that you might find over here in the Lower Mainland. So when you're buying something and if you have to get rid of it, it may take 3 months to 6 months to a year to sell versus over here it might sell in 3 months. So you got to be prepared for that. So you got to have that medium to long-term horizon in these markets. But getting in now where there's still opportunity is now's the time to get in any of the markets we touched on today.
So get in now. Just don't buy cheap crap.
Don't buy cheap crap because crap is crap no matter where it is. Vancouver, Nanaimo, Kelowna, crap is still crap. And there is a lot of that out there in the real estate business. And where you see a lot of people get stuck is they look at something, what that would cost in Vancouver, and they see a deal in Prince George and they go buy in Prince George because it seems really cheap for what it would cost in Vancouver. There's a reason why it's cheap. So just be very cautious when you're buying the secondary markets. Location is everything. And if you miss something by 2 or 3 blocks, it can go dark on you. Dark as in vacant for a long period of time. And you look in, a market, I won't say the name of it, but I was talking to someone the other day about this retail building that's been vacant for coming up 2 years. And they don't know why. And it's like 2 blocks off the beaten path. And that's the problem is it's not on a major artery in a secondary market. And that's how much you can miss it. And that, I don't care how good of a deal you get. A 0 NOI is a 0 cap rate on current income. So you got to be really careful. Rod, we've had you back the year 3. Our listeners know who you are who've tuned into the program. You've uncovered the top 5 markets plus 1 honorable mention. What's Rod MacKay's thoughts on the 2025 market? What's going on here?
Yeah, I think there's lots of exciting things to come. I mean, obviously 2023 was a bit of an off year from the broker's standpoint and on an investment basis. I mean, I think that if you looked at where sellers' expectations were and what investors were willing to pay, it was really hard to bridge the gap. And that carried over maybe a little bit into 2024. But as we started to hear that rates were going to start dropping, there was more and more optimism, and you'd have buyers kind of reaching out, say, keep an eye on things for us. Now, fast forward to today where we've had, I think, 4 consecutive drops at the Bank of Canada. We'll probably have another one here before the year's finished. There's a lot more optimism. Yep. I know some listings that we had were completely stale. And you get that 50 basis point drop. Certainly getting more calls. Now, it doesn't mean that people are willing to overpay or that the prices go up immediately. But it does seem like there are some buyers coming back to the market that, weren't able to get the financing where a property would make sense, where with rates where they are now, it probably does make sense for them. So moving forward to 2025, I think people are just going to have a lot more access to capital. And we should see a pretty strong market. One thing to keep in mind too is obviously we had very high inflation for a couple of years. And so the Fed had to raise the rates in order to keep that at bay. Now the reason why we're dropping the rates is because the economy isn't necessarily in the best place, which directly affects the people that we work with, the businesses and some investors. So, while interest rates dropping helps finance deals, it can still provide some challenges in the market as well. But I think overall, looking into 2025, we've got a lot of optimism, and just talking to people within the brokerage communities, investors that we're working with, everybody seems really excited, lenders, developers. So should be a really good year for commercial real estate.
Absolutely. I would second that. Rod, you know the drill. Before we let you go, we got a 6-pack of lighthearted questions we got to ask everybody here. The 6-pack is powered by our good friends over at Red Point Law.
Red Point Law, Cory, Tim, Falco, Scott, and the team. These are great people with a wealth of experience when it comes to commercial closings and private lending. And I just want to say, Cory, not to cut you off, they have a perfect 5-star review on Google.
So for all your commercial legal needs, visit them at redpointlaw.ca with offices in Vancouver and now open in downtown Kelowna. We've kind of had to custom make this a little bit. You've been on the program so often. We've had to kind of pivot and shift a little bit here to kind of create some new questions, but then we give you a softball as the last question for an easy pitch, knock it out of the park. No questions asked what the answer to that question is going to be. But without that, Melissa's like rolling her eyes here right now.
Was it who's going to win the Stanley Cup?
Nope. That is going to be the first question that we're going to ask you, Rod. I feel like you've seen these. Rod, it's 2025, 2024 hockey season. Melisa, ask away.
Oh, good question.
There you go. I'll let you lead off.
Yeah. All right. So are the Canucks going to win the Stanley Cup in 2025?
No, I'd say give them till 2027 and we've got a shot. But we'll be
2027 and we got a shot.
We'll be contenders. I just I don't know if they pull it off this year, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Okay, well then in that case, who's going to win the Stanley Cup in 2025?
Your guess is as good as mine, Cory.
I'm going to go on a little bit of a limb here. I think they did well last year. Their stars have gotten a bit older, but they got some good young talent now, and they got a good goalie. I'm going to go on a limb here and think if I had a bet today, and I'm not picking Winnipeg, who's like 12-1, I'm going to go with Dallas because I think they've got some good young talent. They've got a good roster. They got a deep roster. They got a goalie. I'm thinking Dallas, and they kind of went pretty far last year, so they got some experience.
Vancouver ownership.
No, that's true. Yeah. The Gallardi family. Yeah. So I would go with Dallas. If I had to pick somebody today, but that could change by next week if you ask me differently. So
yes, that's a good pick.
All right. Next question up, Rod. Best piece of business advice you feel you've ever received?
Best piece of business advice I feel I've ever received. Yeah, I think it would just be that consistency wins. If you stay consistent at something time and time again, repeat the same kind of good habits day after day after day, good things tend to happen. And, the reverse is true with bad habits. So, you need to stay consistent with your good habits, and then things tend to get better.
Good piece of advice. Next question up.
All right. You've done something horribly wrong and found yourself on death row. What's your last meal?
Yeah, I don't think this one's changed. I just like a good ribeye. Yeah, just a nice medium rare ribeye prepared by a nice steakhouse. My dad took me to Highs the other day. It was the first time I had been there, and if I could call them and have them serve me up a nice ribeye, I'd be, I guess, as happy as you can be.
So a Highs steakhouse ribeye would be the last meal.
Sure.
Good choice. Oh, I want to know next time Dad takes you out for dinner.
It was for lunch actually. It was for my birthday though.
Oh,
it's not an everyday kind of thing.
Okay, but still,
and I did
lunch.
need a nap after I came back to the office.
Oh, well, I was wondering why your productivity was falling off that afternoon. Now it all makes sense. All right, Rod, next question up. Looking back on your life now, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh boy, I thought you were going to throw me up a beach ball here.
No. The beach ball is coming in the last question.
What advice would I give my younger self? Can I call a friend, or can I get a?
Yeah, absolutely.
How does it work here? Is this like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire rules? Can I get a 50-50?
Sure. You can do it whatever you want. This is you're asking your 20-year. You're looking back on your life. What advice would you give yourself now, living the life that you have, that you would feel be beneficial to the younger Rod MacKay?
Cory, I don't know if I want to say that publicly on the podcast here. Can we?
Yeah, you don't have to. I'll throw it out there for you. I'll throw it out there. So, the piece of advice I'd give myself looking back on it is, as I get older now, and keep in mind I'm over 40 now, there's always going to be tomorrow. And you always sometimes feel when you're younger, like, oh, if I don't do it now, I'm not going to get to it. Or this deal's so good. If we don't get it, we'll never get a deal like this. And you always realize there's always going to be tomorrow. So in essence, just slow down. There's always going to be tomorrow. There'll always be the next deal. But in saying that, a good deal is a good deal. Don't pass on it. But there'll always be the next deal. There'll always be tomorrow. Slow down would be the piece of advice I would give myself looking back on it now. Does that help you, Rod? Does that help you?
Yeah, I like that. Maybe if we could, you could have given me some hints before we did this. I could have been more prepared.
But then we can't. Then it doesn't come across very authentic if you had time to script it.
That's true.
Kind of catch you off guard. All right, Melisa, 5th question here.
All right, 5th question. What is your dream car?
If money was no object, what would be the dream car?
Oh boy, if money was no object, honestly, it would be probably That's a tough one. It would be something I could take on the service roads that would handle the off road really well. I'd probably just keep it really simple. I'd just go for a 4Runner.
A 4Runner, there you go.
Not just
I
any
love
4Runner,
that.
like very, very, very modified. You'd probably have it lifted. There'd be lots of modifications to it, and yeah, I mean, it's not really like what everybody would think of as a dream car, but yeah, I just want something that would take me places. Right now, I've got a Subaru, and it does the trick. But yeah, I think I'd just go with 4Runner.
A practical man.
There you go.
I like that.
Melissa was very impressed with your answer. She was very impressed. All right, Rod.
Yeah.
Last question up, and we're just going to give you the softball here to knock you out of the park before the weekend. Favorite band?
Favorite band?
Probably from Vancouver, may start with an N. Favorite band, Rod?
Well, you know what, Cory? I didn't get invited to the show when you went out to Nickelback, but I will say Nickelback is a great band. Whenever Carol and I are driving back from a road trip, or if we're just stuck in Lionsgate traffic after a hike, sometimes we'll just throw on Nickelback to kind of wake us up and get the vibe going. And
party starter. It's like a party starter.
Yeah. It is. It does. It brings the energy level up, because if you're sitting in that Lionsgate traffic, it can be pretty demoralizing after a long day. So sometimes you need a little Nickelback to pick you up.
There you go.
Are they from Vancouver?
Not originally, but they're like adopted hometowns, Vancouver. So we're just gonna call them Vancouverites. Or
okay.
So it's just so we know for the record, is Nickelback your favorite band, or are you just saying that because I led the witness here and you want to jump in with like the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if I have a favorite band. I know, the first band I saw in concert was the Rolling Stones in Chicago, and I listened to a lot of classic rock as I was growing up. Probably not as much anymore, but we could throw them in there.
There you go.
Though I don't really listen to them.
All right, there you go. So Rod's favorite band, Nickelback. Rod, how can our listeners find out more about you? Everything's going on in William Wright Vancouver. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they find out more?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, you can find me on our website at williamwright.ca. My email and cell contacts there, Roderick at williamwright.ca, and cell 604-763-5510. So if you have any questions, or you're looking to invest in commercial real estate, I'd love to have a chat with you.
Excellent. Well, Rod, thank you so much for joining us again on our annual episode of our top 5 markets for 2025.
Thanks, Cory.
Thanks, Rod. Take care. There you have it, folks. Our interview with Rod MacKay from our William Wright Vancouver office and the top 5 markets. I don't think there was a lot of surprise there, because these are things we've obviously talked a lot about over the years. But again, Nanaimo, I still think, is the best market right now to buy into, because the metrics. Now, I'm not saying there's not good opportunities in Victoria or Kelowna. It's just the metrics seem to click there a little bit more than some of the other markets, because Victoria's already been discovered. Kelowna's already been discovered, right? They've had some great run-ups in those markets, which is obviously for investors looking to get in today, you're not getting the same price someone did a couple of years ago. Nanaimo has had a run-up, no question, but not nearly to the effect that we've seen in both in Kelowna or Victoria. As an example, that's why we kind of put it towards the top of the list and not at number 5.
It's interesting to revisit this every year and see it's still in number 1.
It's still number 1.
It hasn't gotten there yet where, it's saturated and
what happens is
discovered it.
The more investors that buy into that market, the more stuff like that, the market doesn't become as lucrative for investors. So then it will probably fall down the list as the metrics change. But right now, those metrics haven't really changed.
I think it just shows that we don't have very many people listening to the show every year.
No.
Otherwise, Nanaimo would be popping off.
All 6 people that listen haven't bought into Nanaimo yet. So that's what we're trying to encourage them.
Right.
You asked me an interesting question before we hit record on the posting. You asked me, would I have voted for Trump? And I honestly, I don't know who I'd vote down there, because obviously, if you look at the economy, how it performed under Trump, and he's very pro-America, and granted he had the post-COVID swing, that you almost have to go back to the Clinton administration to find an economy that did as well, because Barack Obama's economies were not bad, but they weren't soaring by any stretch, and Bush's economies were the same. But the Clinton administration obviously had a run-up of an economy, but they also did have the .com thing that kind of took off. And Trump did have the post-COVID thing that took off, which probably swayed the numbers. But I don't know if he's the answer. He definitely will make for good TV, right? So if you're looking for something interesting, like, he definitely makes for good TV. But again, I don't know if Harris is the answer, because Biden hadn't really done a whole lot, and she was kind of vice chair, and she hadn't really done a whole lot. And it's not like it wasn't like, it's not broke, why fix it? It's like, it is broke, but nobody's fixing it. So I don't really know. I don't know who the answer was.
Yeah.
Down there. I don't know. Obviously,
it
America,
shocks me that these are their only two candidates.
Oh, Republican Democrat, right? You did have the independent there. JFK Jr. ran, but he didn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
So he's apparently going to be part of Trump's administration. It's going to be an interesting 4 years ahead, that we've got NDP here that's going to spend money out of control and then pass it on to our kids to deal with. We got Trump down south that might have a full reign to do whatever he wants and doesn't care. And we might get a conservative government in Canada. So it's going to be a very interesting next 12 months, a more interesting next 4 years to see how it plays itself out. Hopefully we'll all survive. And we go on to the next political realm.
That's right. I've got my popcorn. I'm just going to buckle up.
The only thing I will say is, like, when Trump was in power, like, every night he had one-liners. Like, every night on the news, they had a good one-liner where he would say something 3 or 4 days earlier and then just completely contradict himself 3 or 4 days later, and then completely argue with somebody how he's not contradicting himself, but he was on video 3 days earlier saying the opposite. So he does make for good TV. Nevertheless, it's gonna make some good TV in 2025. Melisa, for those who may want to participate in the housing market, how can someone get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can call me 778-869-4477 or email me at melissa@vancouverrealestatepodcast.com.
And for those wanting to do commercial real estate, you can reach out to us at our Vancouver office anytime, 604-428-5255. Let us know what you're looking for. We'll put you in touch with brokers throughout the province. You can send me an email, Cory@williamwright.ca. Always love hearing from listeners. Or you can visit our website, williamwright.ca. Sign up for the latest and greatest news in commercial real estate. And I promise there'll be no political rants that you will receive through that email stuff there. We have our quarterly reports we release. We talk about everything that happened there. We do touch on politics and interest rates in those reports all the time, but we will not rant on any of the politicians that we talk about on the show, because they're all going to come looking for us one day.
All right.
All right, guys. We'll be back next week with another great episode. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.
Subscribe today.